what I'm going to do for you for the next few minutes is just kind of talk to you about your next steps as far as the wall shelf. Now, first thing I did was print off some sheets so that you guys had a place to draw some rough drafts. What you were going to do is then, after you get your rough draft taken care of, is we can start designing something in OnShape. Now, this is the first time that we are looking into something as far as 3 dimensions. Your cutting board, you only needed to draw in 2 dimensions. So we're going to look primarily at this very basic wall shelf here and just kind of build off of that and figure out how to best incorporate OnShape and put it together so it's in 3 dimensions. For those of you that took engineering with me last year, this is just a simplified version of your pen project. So we're going to look at our criteria and constraints, and we're just remembering, if we're kind of relaying back to this graphic right here, where it's got back shelf 18 inches brace, and it's called primitive components that you can't quite see because my screen is in the way. There we go. These primitive components are located also here as far as measures. So we're going to look at 4 pieces. We've got 2 side braces, minimally need to be 5x5. Shelf that's got a 5-inch by 18-inch component, a back shelf that's 5-inch by 16.5. And the one thing this doesn't say is it's going to be cut out of 3 board feet of alder that will be provided. That alder is roughly about 3/4 of an inch thick. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a new OnShape page. So I just went into OnShape, did a new document. I called this wall shelf 2 because you may have seen my previous wall shelf that's got the C-shaped brackets for my first name. Very basic. Okay. I want to walk you through how to get all of these parts put together. So first thing I'm going to do is start with let's just do my shelf. I'm going to use these basic measurements here, and this is all minimal. So 5x18. So I'm going to start at the top view, new sketch, top view, mute everything I don't need. I'm going to do a rectangle, corner to corner. I said that was 18 by 5. There's our shelf. Go back into isometric view. We're going to do something called an extrude. So what you saw me do, I'm going to backtrack just a bit, just slow down just a bit. If you're in this sketch where you're editing all of your dimensions, you just need to click this green check mark and you're done with your sketch and you have this rectangle. Now, what we haven't talked about is how to make things in 3D. So you'll notice the button next to sketch has these 2 little boxes. It's called an extrude. So if I click extrude, I can then go ahead and grip my rectangle and I can start to make a 3-dimensional object. This is about where we stopped with the power of OnShape with your cutting boards, because we just assumed that you're going to have the same thickness throughout. The majority of you went with about 1 inch or potentially 3/4 of an inch, and we're going to do that same thing in OnShape with our alder at 3/4 of an inch. So all I did was hit extrude, I clicked the rectangle. It's going to say we're going to create a new surface out of the face of sketch 1, and we're going to go at a depth of 3/4 or 0.75. Hit enter and finish our extrusion, and this is going to be the bottom of our shelf. Awesome. If you look at my other piece though, that's 1 of 4. So how do I make the other pieces to it? And this is one of my favorite parts of OnShape, is that literally every single document that you need to put together is going to be contained within this document. And I was redundant. Every single part that you need to make is going to be contained inside of this document. So if you take your cursor down into the lower left-hand corner, you can insert something called a new element. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new part studio. You'll notice what I'm drawing on right here is called Part Studio 1. So you can imagine if I click a new Part Studio, I now have Part Studio 2 down here. This is going to get a little bit convoluted though. So I'm going to call this something different. And the way that you do that is you either right click or hit control click if you're on a laptop like your Chromebooks, or God forbid Mr. Godwoz's what would that be? MacBook Pro. So control click or command click or right click if you have a mouse, hit rename. And I'm just going to call this shelf. Perfect. Now I can go in and rename my Part Studio 2, which I'm going to name back. And I'm going to create one more. And we're going to call this the brace. Now the coolest part about this is that I did say that you do need 4 parts in total, but I only need to draw this once. If you divert your eyes to my first shelf that I made just for practice, you'll see that it says shelf, brace, and back. I don't need to make more than one of these braces in order for this to work. So I'm going to go ahead and change that when I'm ready. So I've got my shelf taken care of. Let's go ahead and start working on the back. The back, I like to have the geometry on the front plane. I'm going to look at it from the front side. That's how we're going to take care of things. So delete all of my other views. I'm going to go in and draw a real quick something or another. I believe it's 7 by 6.5 on here. This, even though this says 5 by 16.5, this is also says 7 by 16.5. That's all right. So we're going to say 7. Oop, nope. 16.5 on that one and 7 on the other. And our sketch is finished. Now, I didn't do anything very cool on the backer for my first shelf, so I'd like to be able to change some things. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to continue editing the sketch, and I'm going to use something called the spline tool. Spline tool is really easy in terms of trying to make different shapes. And so what you end up doing, I ended up finding the midpoint of my shelf. I kind of want to make some really like bulbous looking back that looks kind of cool. I'm going to try and relay this to match up with some other elements. And then once I'm done, I'm going to escape. Oop, that's not what I want to do. Do that every time. Draw some mountains. I want to attach that to the midpoint. Go down, go up, back there, and then hit enter or escape. Perfect. You hit escape. Got it figured out, folks. We're all good. Okay, so I want to create this kind of like mountain range if this were Mr. Patel drawing from way back when he was a teensy lad. I also am going to do something with this Instrad polygon tool because that looks kind of cool. So I'm going to put a hexagon. Oh, pentagon. Let's do that. Right there. And you'll notice that once I finish my sketch, I have all sorts of different elements to it. But it is still gray, which means that we have a sealed project. Perfect. What I'm going to do for extrusion this time is instead of creating something entirely new, or excuse me, grab the entire box, I'm going to just grab the part that I want to extrude. And you'll notice that it doesn't get anything else. Easy. You know, say if I did make a mistake and I wanted to cover that guy up, I could, but I don't particularly want that. I'm going to put my pentagon right there. Keep in mind that our alder is actually going to be 3/4 of an inch thick. And there we go. Here's my backer. In this, for the sake of time, I'm going to really just quickly go through and make a brace. I like to make the brace on the right plane. I'm going to get rid of all these other ones. And I'm just going to really quickly do a triangle. I think triangles do just fine as braces. And I'm just going to drop this down, drop that down, connect them. Perfect. Do need to make some adjustments because I feel like our brace needs to be 7 inches. I'm going to make this side 6 inches just for funsies. And you know what? For another funsie, I'm going to make some other things that look like that. Sure, this looks cool. Excellent. Okay, finish that. Go ahead and extrude. Not sketch, we're going to extrude. that part. Our alder is 3/4 of an inch. And we're good to go. Perfect. We are ready for this last one. You'll notice that there is a box called Assembly. And that tab actually represents an ability for us to put all of our pieces together, like you saw in my first example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Assembly, and I'm going to start placing items into my assembly. So if you notice under Insert, go ahead and open that up. It automatically brings in the parts that I've been working on. Okay, so I'm going to bring in my back. Oop. Zoom out a little bit. I'm going to bring in my brace. Here's the awesome part. We need 2 braces, so I just click it and drop it again. Excellent. Very nice. What I like to see. Easy. And then bring in my shelf. Okay. Do have an origin point here. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple different things using something called a mate. It's like you're putting 2 pieces together. So we're doing a fasten mate. We also have different things like revolute mates, slider mates, planar mates. We're not going to worry about those too much for right now, because all we need to do is just do a fasten mate where I'm going to mate certain elements to this project. Now, lots to unpack here, because you'll notice I have this little circle with a bunch of weird lines coming out of it. These lines represent your X, Y, and Z axes. And you'll notice that there are different points that I could do a mate onto, as well as different orientations, different planes. So the first thing I'm going to do is set this to my origin. Okay. I want to make sure that that corner is in the origin. I also wanted to make sure that I'm getting this flat face so that it references this top face that I have my cursor over. Okay. Now, I'm going to highly recommend you use a mouse, because you're going to need to do a lot of orbiting. Orbiting is this just revolving around using my right-click feature. I'm going to need to look above and below. So I'm going to do a fasten mate. I'm going to bring this brace over. Now, if I just accidentally hit this middle portion and try and click onto the spot that I need, oof, watch what happens. I'm going to click there without thinking, and I'm going to click there without thinking. And it didn't go. I think I need to do a planar mate. Yeah, let's do a planar mate. So planar mate should be the only one we do. So I'm just going to randomly click the very center of this. I'm going to click the very center of... Oh, and you can see that my brace just literally went right to the very center. Okay, I don't want that. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to do a planar mate, and we want to be very particular about where we're going to place our brace. So you'll notice I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to try and make sure, let me kind of get back to my isometric. I want to make sure that this corner touches the opposite corner on the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to line up that corner, rotate down. I'm looking at the bottom of my shelf, and I want that to fit right on that corner. This may take you a few times to get correct, okay? And you may need to do some things where you're rotating around using this button here, rotate some things around, and make sure that everything is lined up how we need to. Pretty simple. So now I'm going to do the same thing with this back. I'm going to go ahead and do a planar mate. I'm going to zoom in on my back and make sure that I've got the right spot. Looks like it should be right about there. And it means that I want to line up to this corner here. Perfect. We are moving and grooving. Okay, one more. I want to check to make sure that I've got the right side this time, since I'm on the right side of the shelf. So I'm going to click that button. Looks great. Tie it up into that corner. Excellent. We are good to go. Awesome. Couple problems. First one. This shelf is kind of in a weird spot. I want this to come all the way to this edge. I also noticed that my shelf is not long enough. I made my braces 7 inches. This is only 5 inches across. Pretty easy. I can go back into my shelf, open up my sketch, redimension that 5. Change that to 7. It makes it just a teensy bit wider. Hit OK. If I go back to my assembly, automatically changes. How cool is that? Very cool. Wonder if it's going to work for my back. It might break my splines that I've got going on. Let's see. So I said that this was 16.5. I want to change that to, I believe, 18. Kind of messed with it a little. We can go through and kind of fix a couple things. So I can grab these guys and kind of move them around. I'll grab this thing and just kind of see what it does. If I really need to, I'll just redraw it. I do need to move my pentagon. Oh, no. It's stuck there. Oh, okay, there we go. All right, good enough. And if you... Ooh, we may need to change that fastener. So what I can do is I will redo this planar mate. By deleting those connectors. And then I'll change it such that I've got that corner. This might be a bit tricky. Yeah, I need to move this. There we go. Planar mate, that corner. Set to that corner. I hit solve because it's kind of grumpy. Oh, didn't like that. We need to do the back first. Let's go ahead and do that again. Let's go ahead and get rid of the second planar mate, honestly, because that's the one that we had before. Are you going to work this time? Solve. Bueller. There we go. Okay, I don't know what I did, but it works now. So I can help you guys with a lot of this, but that's just a real quick introduction for how to do things. So hope it's all good. See you on Thursday.